Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a good few different styles, but I think it is definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known both for their New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but also for their big, fruity, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, modern, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. But these guys are a Swedish brewery that you really need to check out if you're interested in those beer categories, and I always enjoy reviewing the new beers that they release every month here in Sweden. So yeah, the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know these guys can do very, very well. We've had it from them numerous times before, but this one is a little bit old school within that style category, so I'm quite curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast, and we're going to return to the wonderful DuckPond Brewing. So this particular beer is called Flexer. It comes in at 8% ABV. This is another New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And this one is single hopped with Citra. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. I haven't had a single hop Citra New England Double in quite some time. Probably the last one actually would have been the Ecor from OO Brewing actually. So yeah, that's quite a while ago when I think about it. But yeah, as I've said before, DuckPond very good when it comes to New England Hazy IPAs, so this one should be nice. I've heard good things about this beer, and this was released as part of the Lokalis Moskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for January of 2023. So yeah, let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from DuckPond Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and of course remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go up to the search bar, put in the your hometown, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. If I've reviewed beers from that area, they will pop up. Otherwise you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries which have just been updated, and there are a few new countries in there as well that you can check out. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and chat a little bit about DuckPond Brewing once again. So, DuckPond Brewing were originally known as Mikrofonbryggeriet, or the Microphone Brewery in English, but this company is the brainchild of Nikola Sarsevich, who is a singer and songwriter, and he plays in the band Millencolin, who have been making music since 1993. So, the band was originally based in Örebro, but they then took a break, and at this point Nikola moved over to Gothenburg, Göteborg on the west coast. But in 2013, he began brewing with his friend Christian Silva when he was studying international marketing in Skövde, and at this point the two were just brewing very small 20-litre batches together, and a bit later on when they started to think that this could be a commercial business, Nikola went down to Berlin for a 2-week brewing course. So the two of them then started the company together officially, and for a while it was based in Nikola's house, and at this point they were brewing 200-litre batches. But they changed their name in the summer of 2019, having got their beers out there and into Systembolaget, and the main reason they did this was to make the brewery's name a bit more memorable and a bit more accessible for foreign markets actually. So they have been building up their international sales over the last couple of years. But that year in 2019 they produced around 70,000 litres, and these guys are also one of the co-owners of the Wizard Brewing brand along with Morgendagens, who are also very well known for their kind of fruity, juicy modern sours. But originally they were producing most of their beers at Popels Brewery in Jonsered and Odd Island, who I believe are based in Mölndal if I remember correctly, but they now have their own premises in Kungsten in Gothenburg, and they recently hired Magnus Laurén to come in as their new brewer, but they still brew a number of their beers down at Odd Island as well, so they can meet all the orders and things that they have. Like I said to you earlier, they are best known for their New England Hazy IPAs and their sort of modern, juicy, smoothie, fruity, whatever we're calling them, sour beers, and we've had very nice examples of both of these style categories from this brewery over the last few years. We have had one or two nice lagers from this brewery as well, actually, but hopefully going forward we see a few more things. It would be cool to try some imperial stouts and barley wines and things like that from DuckPond going forward, but we'll keep an eye on what they're releasing over the next wee while. But as of January 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 80 different beers under the DuckPond name, and there were about 20 or so released under the Microphone Brigadier name before that as well. So yeah, in total about 100 different beers actually have been released by this brewery. So yeah, that is all I can really tell you about DuckPond Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a wee look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have another wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it does look very, very nice. Plain silver top on the can there, which looks great. There you can see DuckPond Brewing as well, which is good. But yeah, this one at the side, Flexer, 8% double IPA. Like I said to you, this one is a New England Imperial Double, hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Single hop with Citra, a hop that we know very, very well. And Citra is American, of course, 14% alpha acid in a New England IPA. It's going to give you lots of it's going to give you a little bit of that passion fruit, but it's going to give you quite a big, smooth, juicy mango element, and you will also get some of the lime and limey characters out of it as well. Remember, different hops behave differently depending on what yeasts you put them with and in what kind of malt base you do. So Citra will taste quite a bit different in a West Coast IPA compared to what it will in a New England hazy IPA. So yeah, just bear that in mind. But 440ml can, I believe this one cost me 55 Swedish kroner, so that's about €5.50, £5 sterling, maybe about $6 American, something like that, although the exchange rates have changed quite a wee bit over the last wee while. But yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. The Flexer New England Hazy Double IPA. So, looking forward to this. This is actually, I think this is the first of the local beers that I'm reviewing for you from the release of January, actually. So, there we go. But you can, it feels like a wee while actually since I've reviewed something from DuckPond, and you can never go wrong with these guys usually. So yeah, we've got a good chunk of the beer out and into the glass, and I have to say it looks pretty nice. That's got one of the prettiest colours I think I've seen in a DuckPond beer. But yeah, so before the head disappears, I would say that this one is poured with about a 3/4 finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head there. You can see it's mainly medium-sized bubbles. In this one, it's not the most foamy of heads you're going to see, but a few bigger bubbles toward the top of it there too, which look very good. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer, I would say it looks really nice. It reminds me of a kind of slightly mixed tropical fruit juice, but a very kind of bright and very rich yellow colour. So remember, the colour of these beers depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour too. But when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about those latter 2 variables actually. In terms of the level of haze in this one, because it is a New England hazy, remember this depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree the yeast. It varies from brewery to brewery and beer, even beer to beer. There's not a rule about, you know, going further up the alcohol scale, thus there's more wheat and oats, you get more haze. It doesn't quite work like that. But yeah, this one I have to say is pretty damn opaque actually when you look at it. If I shine the light through it, it is pretty soupy and gloopy, this one, but yeah, it looks nice. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a slightly sweeter New England IPA from DuckPond Brewing, but as I say, these guys are pretty well respected in this category, and rightly so, based in my experience. But 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head there, but the head incidentally has just faded down to be a more kind of thin foamy layer, and we're getting bigger bubbles at the top of it now as well, which is quite interesting. So just look at that, bit of change in surface tension there. That's good. But yeah, other than that, I don't think we need to say anything about the appearance of this one. Nothing particularly surprising when we consider what style the beer is. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what we have. Yeah. So, This one does smell very nice, actually. Again, it's nothing surprising, but it's really nicely done. First impression of this one is it's quite sweet. It's a sweeter leaning New England IPA. It's got a good little bit of oatiness to it as well. Little touch of wheat in there, but nice big kind of floral aromatic aroma to this one, and lovely, yeah, just smooth, juicy, fruity characters. Everything you would want from the style. We've had many of these beers now as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we've reviewed more New England IPAs on the channel these days than we did West Coasts over all the years. But yeah, that's by the by. Yeah, aroma wise, this is very, very nice. So let's just break it down and describe it for you that wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, for me, there's a good little bit of a kind of fresh white bread crust there. That's the backbone of it. You know, it's like a fresh hedgehog roll that's come straight out of the bakery. You've got a little bit of that kind of flour left on it, which is always nice. So, in terms of the in terms of the bready character above that, I mean, before you get into the bread, you have got a little bit of that Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. Yeah, lovely Jacob's cream crackery notes to it. Maybe a little hint of a woody character. But yeah, above all of that, you've got a lovely, fresh, fluffy, white bready character coming out of it. And that's from the barley malt, of course, in the beer. But above that, you can smell the wheat in this one. The wheat's behaving quite interestingly in this beer, because in the middle of the nose, it does have a little touch of bitiness. Usually it's quite smooth for the most part, but in the back of the nose, yeah, you have got quite a little bit of bitiness coming out of the wheat in this beer. So that's pretty interesting, I have to say. Yeah, on top of that, you definitely have a little bit of you definitely get a bit more of the oaty character out of this one. And as I've said to you before, when it comes to the oats in New England IPAs, they are usually an indicator of how fresh the beer actually is. I know this one was released through Glassbanking in December, actually, so this beer probably will be about 5-6 weeks old. That's kind of typical when it comes to Systembolaget. It is one of the downsides of the system, that the beers have to sit there for a while before they can get them out. It's kind of annoying for both consumer and for breweries, so Systembolaget need to work on that. But anyway, but yeah, with this one, you can smell a little bit of the dryness coming out of the oats. The drier the oats are, the older the beer is, the more creamy they are, the fresher the beer is. That tends to be what you find. But you get a little touch of dryness out of the oats, but that also gives you a wee bit of sweetness. But other than that, you get that big, smooth, creamy, dense sort of thing out of it, which I really quite like. So yeah, on the malty side of that beer as well, you've got that nice kind of you do have a good little bit of a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. Yeah, so for me, yeah, definitely Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch. You've got a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing going on as well. But yeah, it really is more of just a big, thick, creamy, oaty and sweeter leaning New England double IPA. As I've always said with this style, for me, when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of the beer, there's a few things you need to look out for. 6 things, I would say. So you've got the kind of farmhousey, yeasty character, the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more prominent in American brewed West Coast New England IPAs, sorry, as I've always said. But you've also got the wheaty bitiness, the barley malt bread, the oaty creaminess, and the sort of sweeter side as well. So there's a lot of stuff to think about with these beers. They're a lot more complex, I think, than some people give them credit for. But yeah, on that, you have the on that, yeah, this is for me, malty side, oaty, creamy, sweet, big, thick notes coming out of it. So yeah, it's the way it goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, the way that goes together on the malty side is very inviting, I have to say. But let's move on to the hoppy side of things then. So for me, the hoppy side of this beer, the green component is as you'd expect. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but otherwise quite a bright but slightly wet floral component to it. Also a little bit of grassy zestiness. These are typical traits that you find with Citra. But this again, the brightness of the green component here indicates that it's mainly late addition and dry hopping that has been used in this beer. Otherwise it's been, you know, some sort of cryo. Actually, and I've got a feeling there might be some cryo hop in this because you can smell the sort of wetness too. But usually when the green component is brighter, that's late addition and dry hopping. 3 types of hoppings, remember: early addition hopping, first hour of your wort boil, it gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping, last half hour of the wort boil, sorry, that gives you a little bit of bitterness but mainly flavour aroma. Dry hopping after the wort boil is complete, that gives you only flavour and aroma actually. But yeah, with New England IPAs, they rely on the latter two. Sometimes they've got a little touch of early addition hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3, hence why they're more bitter. But yeah, with this one, the green component is quite wet but also quite bright. When it comes to the fruity side of the beer, it's interesting too because the fruits are actually again quite wet and quite oily, which to me suggests maybe cryo hops. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. We'd be very curious to know what type of Citra hop it is they're using in this one, or what treatment it's had, I should say. Maybe that's a better way to say it. But yeah, definitely a little bit of that stronger passion fruit, big juicy oily mango, a little bit of pineapple, and you've also got a nice kind of, you do also have a nice little bit of just lemon. I do get a little bit of a lemony gooseberry note out of this one, and a bit of lime as well at the front of the nose. These are all things that you would expect of the Citra hop. So yeah, passion fruit, big oily juicy mango, a little bit of, you know, apricot and papaya and stuff in there, and then yeah, a bit of lime, a little bit of lemony zest on the very front tip of the nose, and yeah, everything I think goes together really nicely in this one. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me, this beer, I have to say. I like it. So yeah, awesome stuff. Yeah, let's take a taste of this one then and see how it goes. I always say though, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you get stuck in. But yeah, this one is the Flexer, a New England hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from DuckPond Brewing in Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. So yeah, that's nice. It's got a little bit more kind of punch and zip to it than I thought it was going to have, but in the aftertaste it is pretty much as I thought. Yeah, a smooth, sweet, and just nice and juicy New England Double, this one. You know, I'm not surprised. DuckPond know how to do this style. They always play around with it a wee bit and still make it turn out really nicely. So yeah, I cannot knock this at all. Yeah, this is nice, I have to say that. Yeah, it's got a bit more, the floral character in this one comes out a wee bit more as well. That's the other thing I would say about this. It does have a good bit more, the green component is a good bit more kind of pungent and punchy than I was expecting from the aroma actually. So yeah, I could actually be wrong about the cryo hops in this one, so it's always possible. But yeah, this is good, I will say that. Yeah, so let's just go through this beer and describe it in the way that we always do. Middle third of your palate then. Backbone of the beer is as we were suspecting it would be from the aroma. You've got that lovely little bit of fresh white bready bread crust in there. Toward the front of that, you also have a little touch of you've got a little touch of woodiness in there. Yeah, there's a little touch of woodiness in there, and then above that bread crust, There's a slight bit of Jacob's cream cracker in this one. Definitely getting a little bit of that Jacob's cream cracker, but then above all of that, you start to get the bready notes out of this one. I want to say there's a very slight layer of like a kind of wholemeal brown bready character to this one, just sitting above the cracker there. But then you get a fluffy and quite airy white bread. But at the same time, the bread that I'm getting in this beer has a wee bit more density to it than I've had from other IPAs I've had recently. So that's something I'm keen to keep in mind. So yeah. On top of that kind of more fluffy, airy white bread, you do get the wheat in there too. And the thing that's interesting about this, I picked this up in the aroma as well. The middle third of your palate, you can feel the wheat there, and it does have just that little bit of bite to it. It does have that little bit of bite in the middle third of the palate, which usually you get at the back, which is kind of interesting. But above all of that, you have the OT character in this beer. So yeah, this is interesting. The more I drink of this beer, the more floral character I get, and also the more wheaty bitiness I get. That's interesting for me. So yeah, on that you have some really nice and the OT character above the wheat. You can feel that down the middle kind of line of your tongue, the OT notes are really quite creamy, but at the same time you can feel they've got a good bit of density to them. And as you move out toward the edges of the palate there, you start to get that wee bit of you start to get a little bit of the kind of dryness out of the oats, and also a little bit of the sweetness too. So that's interesting. So yeah, a little bit of, as I say, a little bit of a wheaty. It's kind of interesting because at the very edges of the palate you can feel a bit of the wheaty bitiness coming through, the dryness of the oats, and then down the middle of the tongue, as I say, that more dense but slightly creamier oaty character. That's really interesting. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you've got that lovely. You do have a lovely little bit of you do have a lovely, just little circle there of that Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And that, of course, is what's covering the alcohol. You do get that little bit of brown sugar, but above that, you know, out to the sides of that, I should say, sorry, you have a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of character coming out of the beer. So that is pretty interesting for me, actually. I do think there's a bit of golden promise in this one. It does feel familiar, but yeah, again, like I say, it's nicely done from DuckPond Brewing, this one. The thing that's surprising about this beer in the malt base is just the pungency of the yeah, it is just the pungency of the wheaty character in the beer. So yeah, that's nice with this one. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. So let's go on to the back third of the palate. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up there, which I do quite like. And then the base of the back third of your palate, of course, you've got the bread crusty, grainy characters in there. Yeah, you've got the bread crusty, grainy characters in there, and they are a little bit drier and grainier, if you like. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Above that, you have some of the crackery notes as well. Those are a little bit more prominent, a little bit drier. But then, yeah, I do get a little bit more of a grainy, wholemeal, brown bready character there. But then you have above that, you have a really airy, white bready layer coming out of this one. So that layer is, of course, a lot taller and a lot more airy on the back third of the palate. And then above that, you have you do have some nice wheaty bitiness coming out of it. So yeah, I like that. Yeah, the wheaty bitiness that comes out of this beer is pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, I like that. So above all of that wheaty bitiness, there is a little touch of like a farmhousey, bready character to the beer. So yeah, that is quite interesting as well. But yeah, this one stands out to me in that sense that it's how would you say, it stands out in the sense that the yeasty character isn't so prominent in this one. I'm finding the wheat in this beer is actually quite powerful, and compared to the aroma where I thought it was going to be more oaty and creamy, that is a bit of a turnaround. But yeah, above the wheaty bitiness in this beer, there is a little touch of like a farmhousey bread, little tiny bit of honeycomb in there, but definitely that back third of the palate, the flavour is a lot taller. Then as you come further forward, it condenses down a little bit and squashes more together. So yeah, I like how that goes. How that everything pieces together in this one for sure. Yeah, so a really nicely done beer, this one, in terms of the malty and yeasty side of things. But yeah, it's a bit more wheaty leaning for sure. On the hoppy side of things, then, green component first. Back corners of the palate, nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a teeny little bit of herbal character to this one, but not a lot. But then when you come further forward, you do start to get a little bit of a piney dankness to this beer. And that's interesting because usually that's an indicator of early addition hop in this one. So I would love to see the recipe for this beer and just see exactly what they've done with the hopping. Because yeah, you do get a little bit of that piney resinous character in this one. And it is a little bit reminiscent of Chinook, although I know Citra is capable of giving you these piney dank flavours if you use it early enough in the boil. So yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, get a little bit of piney resinous character there in the front, just moving toward the front corners of the palate. But on the front corners of the palate, it is definitely more like floral and aromatic, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's just a wee bit lighter and grassy, I would say. So yeah, there's a bit of grassy zestiness in there, and as I say, a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing. Yeah, I do like how this beer, I do like how it goes together actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, the green component, the sort of piney notes and the spicy floral character goes well with the more prominent nature, if we can call it that, of the wheat in the beer. So yeah, interesting stuff. But let's look at the fruity side of the beer and the front third of your palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of bready build up in there. The base of that front third of your palate is a bit more kind of smooth, for sure, but there's a little bit of bread crust and a wee bit of the oaty character, I would say. And then above that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So, for me, the fruity character is pretty much as you would expect, and it's kind of like we picked up in the aroma as well. At the back of that front third of your palate, there is for sure a little bit of a stronger passion fruit in there. So yeah, nice kind of strong passion fruity note coming out of the beer. As you move further forward, it gives you a juicier, you get like a really nice juicy mango in there, but it's also quite oily at the same time. And as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of like apricot and papaya underneath, maybe a bit more of an oily pineapple on top. And then as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, it's a wee bit more, yeah, it is a wee bit more kind of like lemon. There's a little bit of gooseberry there for me, but it's also got a little bit of limey character too. So there's this oily base in the front half of the front third of your palate, then there's a bit more of a kind of lemony zesty character sitting on top of it, and that actually blends in quite well with the kind of grassy zesty characters that you get on the very front tip of your tongue from the green component of the beer. So yeah, fruity wise, this is quite interesting. It's showing you a wee bit, that this beer is showing you a little bit of the West Coast character from the Citra hop too. So yeah, this beer has made me think a little bit, and I'm quite happy about that. I like beers that do slightly different things. So yeah, in terms of the overall fruitiness of the beer, it does, as I say, it really does show you everything that you can get from the Citron. And I think probably what they've done with this one, if it's a single hop beer, they've probably tried to balance it out so you get a whole variety of things. It's probably used a little bit of early edition, late edition, and dry hopping with this one. I just get the impression with that they've done a wee bit of everything with this beer, but we also need to think about the way these hops have been conditioned too. It could be pellets, it could be cryo oil, it could be something else. Incognito's the new thing that's there as well. But whatever they've done with this, I think DuckPond have done another really nice New England double IPA. In terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off this one, for me, this is top end and mid bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's one of the more oily New England IPAs I've had actually, but at the same time, you get a little bit of you do definitely get a little bit of creaminess underneath. On the IBU count, this one to me feels as if it's a bit higher. You do get more bitterness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste. So I want to say like 40, maybe 50 IBUs coming out of the beer. But the malt base, a little bit grainy and bready. You've also got a nice kind of smoothing it. You've got a quite nice density to the malt base in this beer as well, but it shows you a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of creaminess, and a wee bit of bitiness from the wheat. There's a lot going on in the malt base in this one for me. Also a little bit of the yeasty character there as well, but the fruits for me are juicy on one hand, but quite oily on the other actually. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business from that perspective is actually really nice and very interesting. So it gets a big thumbs up from me on the mouthfeel front too. But it really, in some ways, this beer gives you what you expect from the aroma, but in other ways, you know, the floral character, the piney resin and the kind of wheaty bitiness, it varies from the aroma quite a wee bit actually. But I just have to say DuckPond have done another very solid beer with this one, which is what we expect. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Flexer, a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from DuckPond Brewing in Gothenburg. Really enjoyed this one. A bit more old school with the single hop Citra, but it has gone about its business very nicely. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from DuckPond Brewing as well. Pardon me, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, Slange Skull, cheers. Check out my social media, check out DuckPond social media, and there will be more reviews very, very shortly. Cheers just now.